Fine day to y'all. Welcome to the Healing ALS Conference 2022 in Salt Lake City. My name is McFinn Levere, and I would like to share with you a story that my family and I had to endure. It was a terrifying and insightful journey, and I have waited approximately 15 years to tell this story. And now it's time. When you tell people that you have reversed your ALS, sometimes they think you didn't have ALS. Well, Dr. Richard Bedlack from Duke ALS Clinic reviewed my records from two other neurologists and agreed, McFinn, you had ALS and you reversed it. Once you do that, folks, they want to talk to you a little bit more. Like 5 research projects. They want to know all about my family. Well, that's very interesting. I have Parkinson's disease, dementia, Alzheimer's, and ALS. And I only have 8 people in my family. So 4 of us had a lot of neurological problems. Genetics. They just wanted me to put my saliva in a tube and send it to them so they could study it. There's a lot to our liquids and our stool, our health. There's a lot of health markers in our stool. So they have a research program about that also. And environmental, my environmental history is dangerous. I believe as a young child, I was poisoned with lead in St. Louis, Missouri. And as an adult, I owned a janitorial service. And for 24 years, I did not realize the danger that those chemicals that I was using presented to my body. This one is a little difficult for my wife. I don't go on until I leave my body. The National Institute of Health would like to have my brain and my spinal cord shortly after my death to see if there are any markers that can tell them, how could I reverse ALS? Well, I'm not sure how it reversed, except for my spirit kept me positive because the battle was on with ALS. ALS doesn't sleep. It is coming at you 24 hours a day. Thank God I had a spiritual foundation. In 1972, I was in the monastery. I had been in the world a short time looking for answers to life and wasn't finding them. I found comfort inside of myself. I found that I was a spiritual being having a physical experience. But now we're going to mix ALS into that. Spirituality has a lot of theory. ALS doesn't have theory. It has terror. It has debilitating mental, physical superiority over you. I needed to have something to fight back with. And it really wasn't a fight. It was a reckoning that I have a spirit that is potent. And if the doctors didn't have any faith, I had to create my own, which I did, thankfully. Because in September of 2005, my wife and I, Mona, had no idea what was coming to me. I had been building a kid house. I wasn't supposed to be. I bought the kid house. They were supposed to put it together. I could not get the floor level. Winter was coming. I had no roof. One day I was so stressed. I went down in the woods and just started crying. I went inside and told Mona, I'm being driven crazy by this, Mona. What can we do to help me? I said, we need a contractor. Well, within 30 days of that day, I started to lose the grip in my right hand. It went up my right arm, and then it went up my left arm. Stress, it's a killer. The toxic chemical exposure that I had was growing up in St. Louis, Missouri. I believe that I was exposed to lead as a very small child. I had lots of circumstances in my life that I didn't understand why until I realized and found out that I was saturated in lead. Also, during my career, I owned a janitorial service, and for 24 years, I had no idea that the chemicals that I was using were not good for my body. Living better through chemistry is not always right. It can be dangerous. Well, Mona and I, waiting to see the neurologist, went on a vacation. We were in Mexico, and one day, going for a walk, my legs gave out. I fell to the ground. I ended up in a wheelchair coming back to the States. That was the beginning of true confusion, anxiety, and feeling lost. I needed help. Wow. When you ask for help, you better be ready for the answer. January 06, I had my first neurology appointment. My daughter wheeled me in. He looked at my records and said, your MRI shows you did not have multiple sclerosis. Your spinal tap was negative. So now I need to give you an EMG. I had no idea what that was until he started to stick those needles in me and turn that machine on. The pain was unbelievable. And a short time later, he said, I'm going to stop torturing you now. Your nerves have died, and the rest are dying, and there's no way that they can come back. He said, I'm sorry this has come on to you so quickly, but I believe that you might have less than 18 months to live. When those words came out of his mouth, I didn't know what to do. I I I didn't even I went blank. It was like, what are you saying to me? As my daughter wheeled me out of his office, I said, Sam, he's a liar. Don't believe him. Well, he sent me for my second opinion, and that was UC San Francisco Medical Center in San Francisco. Dr. Laser gave me my exam and said, I believe you have motor neuron disease. And I said, well, is that ALS? And he goes, well, ALS is in the family of that. And I believe you should go next door to the Norris Center to get a consultation for a feeding tube. What? That made things a little bit too real. The feeding tube, that was scarier than you're going to die in 18 months because he wanted me to get a feeding tube right away. I refused. I was confused. I said, I need to think about this. I need to go home. Folks, when the doctors have no hope, that's when you have hope. Never, ever give up your hope. No matter what they say, you never know what tomorrow might bring. Dependent on others, that is for sure. 24 hours a day, I had caretakers. They were wonderful people, but I had no privacy in my life, only in my dreams. No privacy is It's not fun because you want to be alone sometimes and do things for yourself. Well, if I wanted a glass of water, I had to ask for it. What can I say? Mona and Brett gave me their care and their love. Brett would get me up in the morning, dress me, make my breakfast, get out all my supplements. I took every supplement you could think of, approximately 16 a day, with a green drink, an orange drink, a clear drink. These were all because I had a vegan diet and my nutrition was not up to par. Thank you, Brett. Always. Thank you. And Mona, all I can say is one day when I had to pee and Mona wasn't around, I called out her name and she didn't come. And then I called out her name again a little bit louder and she didn't come. And finally, I was screaming for Mona and she came in the door and said, with a towel wrapped around her head, "Can't I even take a shower?" I said, "No, I'm not going to pee in the bed." Well, that's why Brett came into our life. 24 hours a day, Brett was around. He had a walkie talkie, him and Mona. He stayed in our guest house. He was my angel, along with Mona. You know, when the doctors say that there's no hope, it's time for you to create your own. Well, Mona had a prayer circle, and they had been meeting together for 23 years at that time. The doctors kept saying that I had a grim prognosis. I don't think they should be using that word grim, but it kept showing up on my medical records. Well, Mona's prayer circle didn't have anything grim about it. There were approximately 24 people around me. And as they prayed, I accepted my spirit to be enhanced by their prayers. Well, as they started to quiet their prayers, more than my spirit was touched. As they quieted, a voice came out of me that said, "Thank you, everyone. Can you move back? I'm going to get out of my wheelchair." And I did. I pushed myself right out of that chair. I walked in a circle and I sat down by myself. You can see in the picture where my hands are gripping the wheelchair. Well, I'm very sorry to say 5 minutes later, I lost all of my strength. It was unbelievable. It was unbelievable that I gained my strength. And when I lost it, the confusion was intense. I won't go into how intense it got, but it was really depressing. ALS can really play with your mind. Changing state of mind constantly, according to my emotional days. I got so depressed that I asked my sister if her friend in Oregon could lease me her home and so I could sign up for death with dignity. I could, but the only problem was they weren't going to give me those pills until they believed I had 6 months of life left. Could you imagine what it would be like when they thought I had 6 months of life left? No, thank you. That is not me being in charge at all. I am so glad that I did not take that out. Well, at my next doctor's office, when I told him about my feelings, he said, "McFinn, you're depressed." I have something. Lexapro. It will help your depression. I'm like desperate. So I take his Lexapro. A few days later, I call him up and I say, Doctor, your Lexapro is not taking away my stress. Can I please use medical marijuana? And immediately he gave me his okay because we are a medical marijuana state. Ooh, Lexapro does not take away the terrifying feelings that come up quite often. My friend called me up and told me that I needed to see a naturopath. And I was like, this is serious. What's a naturopath? But soon enough, I did talk to Dr. Greg, who looked at my medical records and suggested that I had had a heavy metals test through a blood test. And he said, your heavy metals are really concentrated in your fat and your bones. Let's take a heavy metals test. And when I did, it came back that 5 was normal for a human. My highest lead level was 49. Unbelievable. I was in chelation therapy for 18 months and was able to lower my lead level down to 16. It didn't cure me, but it definitely was one of the factors that hindered my health. Living day to day. Well, you can see there, I'm sitting in my wheelchair in front of my greenhouse. My wonderful wife, Mona, she grew sativa plants to spark me up a little bit, and indica plants when the pain was local or I needed to go to sleep. It was fun actually having the indica at nighttime because it was hard to fall asleep because my mind would just not stop. Feeling alone. Nobody knew what I knew, what I felt inside. Everyone tried to do everything they could for me, but they didn't realize the psychological barrier from the doctor telling me that I was going to die in 18 months. There was no hope in that. And even though I did have hope, those thoughts lingered in my mind. Hidden away, you know, I fell down almost going to bed one night because I have steps in my bedroom. And Brett was taking me down those steps, and we both almost hit the floor. Well, sad to say, that was the day I had to move out of my bedroom with my wife and move into my office in a hospital bed. My friends would come to visit me. It was fun. They'd come into my office. We'd have talk. We might smoke a little marijuana. It was really nice. And then they would go into the living room and talk with Mona. I felt hidden away. So one day I said, Mona, we're going to sell the pool table and we're going to put my bed in the family room. And from that day on, I was in the middle of anything that went on in the house. It's a wonderful idea, folks, to never be hidden away. One of the things that kept me active, since I couldn't walk or move too much, my cranial sacral therapist said, McFinn, you still have 2 fingers and you can move your head. So that means that all your nerves are not dead. I want you on the floor for 45 minutes a day, squirming in any way you can. I want you to get those nerves activated. I didn't like it. I could hardly move. But I set up a vision for myself, a chair across the room, that one day I would squirm over to that chair and pull myself up. I had a vision. And I had a lot of friends. That's all part of the great mystery. I did not seek out healers. They came to me somehow. My phone rang one day and my friend Sebastian said, "McFinn, I sponsored a Filipino Christian healer from the Philippines to come to Nevada County and give healing sessions. Would you like to go?" I had to think about that for a moment because the last healing I had ended very emotionally distressed. But I was not going to give up hope. So I said, "Sure, I'll come." And that day, they wheeled me into the house. Luckily, it was handicap accessible. I waited in the living room, my turn. And when it was my turn, the healer's name was Romy. They wheeled me into the room, and Romy said, "I have this sacred coconut oil. Can I massage you with it?" I said, "Sure." So two gentlemen there picked me up and laid me on this table. Romy gave me a massage, said his prayers as he was doing it. And then he said, "I'm going to raise your right arm, and I want you to say the Lord's Prayer after me." I knew the Lord's Prayer. I said, "Okay." Well, very loudly, we said the Lord's Prayer. As he lowered my arm down to the table, he stepped back and he looked at me and said, "Get off the table and walk." I looked at him and nothing was moving. I said, "I'm sorry, I wish, but I can't move." Another moment went by and he looked at me and he said, "Get off of the table and walk." Once again, I looked over at him and I said, I wish, I really wish, I believe, but I can't move." A moment went by. He looked at me and he said, "Get off of the table and walk." And when he said that, my baby finger moved. My next finger moved. The two fingers that moved already moved. My hand pushed me up to a seated position. He said, "Now get off the table and walk." I said, "No, I could fall." He said, "These two men will make sure that you don't fall." Well, slowly I slipped my toe to the floor and could not believe I could feel the floor. There was strength in my leg. I slipped off that table, and as I walked those 5 steps to the door of the waiting room, Mona said, "You look like a monster when you were walking." Well, it was, I wasn't used to walking. I walked back, though, to that wheelchair. I sat down in that wheelchair, amazed. Mona then wheeled me out to the car. I helped get myself into the van. As we were driving away, poor Mona, I lost everything again. I started screaming and yelling and cursing. I had no idea who was playing with me, what was happening. I'm going to stop there because it wasn't pretty. Well, 10 days after that day, I got a call from the doctor's office. They said, "It's too dangerous for you to come to the office. We're going to have the doctor come to you." Thank you, Dr. Van Houten. What a kind, gentle man. He came to my house that day. He gave me an exam. Nothing was moving. I could not believe the two times that I was able to move. And then now the doctor is examining me and I cannot move. Well, that's understandable. But it was approximately 20 days after that day that Brett, who had tied me to him a few times, said, McFinn, I'm pulling you out of the wheelchair. I'm going to tie you to me and we put your feet on top of my feet and we're going to walk around the house. And that day, during that walk, my arm twitched big. I went, Brett, my arm. He's like, yeah, okay. I said, Brett, something's happening. Well, something was happening. My arm was coming back. 2 weeks later, my arm moved very little, but Brett wanted to see if we could put some weight on my legs. So he brought his friend over and they both held me up and then they let go of me. And as soon as they did, it was painful. I fell straight to the floor. So my hands were starting to move, but not my legs yet. But there's always a but, because 2 weeks later, this was about June the 5th, I believe, of 2006, I had my first physical therapy appointment. My hands were like hooks still, which was good in a way because they laid me on a table and they hooked my hands to these springs and they said, pull. And I could nudge them a little bit. And then they put me on another table and they put my feet to these springs and said, push. And I could push a little. This was amazing because I wasn't losing it. But I was so excited that I wanted to hurry the process. This was the most painful time of my journey because I was starting to walk, but I couldn't lift my arms up to stop me when I fell. And anytime my feet would bump into anything, I would just fall over. Folks, it was tough, but it was amazing. I am coming back and it's not stopping. That's when my meditations became extremely deep because I had no idea that I could come back from ALS. And to me, I truly believe that those spiritual healings were what started my recovery. My wife, Mona, says, McFinn, it was the team of people that you brought together. Well, this was too miraculous. For me, I had a miraculous healing, and I truly believe it. So what happens when you have a miraculous healing? What do you do with a gift like that? I know. You find those others who need help and you dedicate yourself to it. There's nothing more important in my life than why I care about you who have ALS, because I have been in that chair looking out, being depressed. I know what 24-hour-a-day care is about. And that's why I'm here to do whatever I can to inspire you to never give up hope. I am an ALS advocate with everything ALS. You can always go there, everythingals.org. It is a oasis of care, hope, and inspiration. Each one of you, I believe, is a spiritual being having a physical experience, and I am here to have it with you. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me and letting me share my miraculous healing with you. Thank you, everyone.